1. Prepare yourself for a journey into the darkest corners of the human mind. Imagine a charming, intelligent man who could be your next-door neighbor, only to discover he's one of history's most notorious serial killers. Ted Bundy wasn't just a murderer. He was a master manipulator who defied every expectation of what evil looks like. In just seconds, you'll dive into the chilling details of his crimes, the twisted psychology behind his actions, and hear first-hand accounts from those who survived his terror. Stay with us and uncover the horrifying truths about the man who changed our understanding of pure evil. Ted Bundy is a name that evokes chills and morbid curiosity. His story, filled with gruesome crimes and complex psychological traits, remains one of the most disturbing and fascinating tales in the annals of criminal history. This narrative essay delves into the macabre details of Bundy's crimes, exploring the psychological aspects of his personality and utilizing chilling testimonies to create an atmosphere of terror and intrigue. Ted Bundy, born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, had a troubled and complex childhood. Raised by his grandparents under the pretense that they were his parents and his mother was his sister, Bundy's early life was steeped in deceit and confusion. This environment, coupled with an apparent lack of affection and a tumultuous family dynamic, laid the groundwork for his future deviance. As Bundy grew older, his charm and intelligence became evident. He was known for his handsome appearance and charismatic demeanor, traits that he would later weaponize to ensnare his victims. However, beneath this facade lurked a dark and twisted psyche, one that would soon manifest in horrifying ways. Bundy's first confirmed murder occurred in 1974, but it is believed that he began his killing spree much earlier. His modus operandi involved luring young women into his trap by feigning injury or disability, often using a cast or crutches to appear harmless. Once isolated, he would overpower his victims, subjecting them to unspeakable acts of violence and terror. One of Bundy's most chilling crimes was the murder of Linda and Healy, a 21-year-old psychology student at the University of Washington. On the night of January 31, 1974, Linda went to bed in the house she shared with several roommates. She was known to be punctual and responsible, so when she failed to show up for her morning broadcast shift at a local radio station, her friends and family were immediately alarmed. The investigation revealed a horrifying scene in Linda's bedroom. Her bed was neatly made, but there were signs of a struggle. Bloodstains were found on her pillow and the sheets, and her nightgown was found neatly folded and bloodstained. Her clothes for the next day were missing, suggesting that her abductor had dressed her after the attack. Linda herself was nowhere to be found. It wasn't until much later that Linda's fate became known. Her skull and mandible were discovered at Bundy's notorious dumping ground on Taylor Mountain, along with the remains of several other young women. The brutal manner in which Linda was taken from her home and her subsequent fate underscored Bundy's cunning and cruelty. Understanding the psychological makeup of Ted Bundy is a daunting task. He was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, characterized by a lack of empathy, deceitfulness, and a propensity for violent behavior. Bundy himself admitted to being devoid of any real emotions, describing himself as an entity who mimicked human behavior to blend in. Psychologists who studied Bundy noted his pathological need for control and domination. His murders were not just acts of violence, but expressions of his deep-seated desire to exert power over his victims. Bundy's necrophilic tendencies further underscore the depravity of his actions, as he would often revisit the corpses of his victims, engaging in post-mortem sexual acts. The testimonies of those who encountered Bundy, either as victims who escaped or as law enforcement officers, paint a chilling picture of his reign of terror. Carol Duranch, one of the few women who survived an encounter with Bundy, recounted the sheer terror she felt when he tried to abduct her in 1974. "His eyes were cold and devoid of any emotion," she said. "I knew I was looking at death." Law enforcement officers who worked on Bundy's case described him as both intelligent and manipulative. Detective Jerry Thompson, who played a crucial role in Bundy's capture, remarked on his unnerving ability to appear completely normal. "He was the last person you'd expect to be a killer," Thompson said, "but the evidence didn't lie." Bundy's trial was a media spectacle, drawing attention from across the nation. He represented himself in court, using his legal knowledge and charisma to sway the jury. However, the overwhelming evidence, including eyewitness testimonies and physical evidence, led to his conviction. In 1989, after years of appeals and delaying tactics, Bundy was executed in the electric chair. The story of Ted Bundy is a haunting reminder of the depths of human depravity. His crimes, marked by brutality and a complete lack of remorse, continue to fascinate and horrify us. By delving into the macabre details of his actions and the twisted psyche that drove him, we gain a deeper understanding of one of the most notorious serial killers in history. Through the lens of chilling testimonies and psychological analysis, this essay has sought to capture the terrifying essence of Ted Bundy's legacy. 2. Prepare yourself for the shocking truth behind Jeffrey Dahmer, a man who defies every notion of what a monster looks like. Imagine a seemingly normal neighbor with a secret so horrifying, it will make your skin crawl. How did this quiet man commit some of the most gruesome crimes in history right under everyone's nose? Stay tuned as we uncover the chilling details of his macabre acts, dive into the twisted psychology that drove him, and reveal testimonies that will haunt you forever. This is a story you won't believe and can't afford to miss. Jeffrey Dahmer's name is synonymous with horror and revulsion. His story is one of the most gruesome and disturbing in the history of crime, marked by heinous acts and a profoundly twisted psyche. This narrative essay delves into the macabre details of Dahmer's crimes, explores the psychological aspects of his personality, and uses chilling testimonies to create an atmosphere of terror and intrigue. The genesis of a monster. Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. From a young age, he exhibited disturbing behavior, including an obsession with dissecting dead animals. His parents' tumultuous relationship and eventual divorce only exacerbated his growing sense of isolation and detachment. As Dahmer grew older, his dark impulses began to take shape, culminating in a series of brutal murders that shocked the world. The horrors begin. Dahmer's first murder occurred shortly after his high school graduation in 1978. He picked up a hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks, lured him to his home, and bludgeoned him to death with a dumbbell. Dahmer later dismembered the body, crushing the bones and scattering the remains in the woods. This initial killing set the stage for a horrifying pattern that would continue for over a decade. The macabre details. The story of Conorak Synthesymphone. One of the most chilling episodes in Dahmer's reign of terror involved Conorak Synthesymphone, a 14-year-old Laotian boy. On May 27, 1991, Dahmer lured Conorak to his apartment with promises of money in exchange for posing for photographs. Once inside, Dahmer drugged the boy and performed a crude lobotomy by drilling a hole in his skull and injecting hydrochloric acid into his brain. In a bizarre and tragic twist, Conorak briefly escaped Dahmer's apartment and was found wandering the streets, naked and disoriented. Neighbors called the police, but when Dahmer arrived, he convinced the officers that Conorak was his 19-year-old lover who had simply had too much to drink. The police, believing Dahmer, escorted the boy back to his apartment, where he was ultimately murdered. The incident highlighted Dahmer's manipulative skills and the tragic consequences of the authorities' failure to recognize the danger. Conorak's remains were later found among the many body parts in Dahmer's apartment, a gruesome testament to the brutality of his crimes. The psychology of a killer. Understanding Jeffrey Dahmer's psychological makeup is a complex task. He was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, schizotypal personality disorder, and psychotic disorder. Dahmer himself described feeling a profound sense of emptiness and an uncontrollable compulsion to control and possess his victims completely. Dahmer's crimes were not only acts of violence, but also expressions of his profound loneliness and desire for companionship. His necrophilic tendencies and the ritualistic nature of his killings, such as keeping body parts as trophies and engaging in cannibalism, underscored his need to dominate and own his victims entirely. Testimonies from the edge of darkness. The testimonies of those who encountered Dahmer, either as survivors or law enforcement officers, paint a chilling picture of his reign of terror. Tracy Edwards, who narrowly escaped Dahmer's clutches, provided a harrowing account of his ordeal. "He told me he was going to eat my heart," Edwards recalled. His courageous escape and subsequent alerting of the police led to Dahmer's arrest and the eventual discovery of his grisly crimes. Law enforcement officers who investigated Dahmer's apartment were shocked by the sheer horror they uncovered. "It was like walking into a nightmare," said Detective Patrick Kennedy. "There were body parts in the refrigerator, skulls on the shelf, and photographs documenting the dismemberment of his victims. It was a house of horrors." The trial and imprisonment. Dahmer's trial was a media sensation, drawing intense public interest. He confessed to 17 murders, detailing his gruesome methods and the twisted motivations behind them. Despite his confessions, Dahmer pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. However, the jury found him legally sane and guilty of all charges, sentencing him to 15 consecutive life terms in prison. In prison, Dahmer expressed remorse for his actions and became a born-again Christian. However, his notoriety made him a target for other inmates. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by a fellow prisoner, ending the life of one of the most infamous serial killers in history. Conclusion. The story of Jeffrey Dahmer is a haunting reminder of the depths of human depravity. His crimes, marked by unimaginable brutality and a complete lack of empathy, continue to fascinate and horrify us. By delving into the macabre details of his actions and the twisted psyche that drove him, we gain a deeper understanding of one of the most notorious serial killers in history. Through the lens of chilling testimonies and psychological analysis, this essay has sought to capture the terrifying essence of Jeffrey Dahmer's legacy. 3. Prepare yourself for the shocking and true story of Ed Gein, the man who inspired horror legends. What if I told you that behind the quiet, unassuming facade of a small-town handyman lay a gruesome secret that defies all expectations? Discover the chilling details of his macabre crimes, including body parts turned into household items. Uncover the twisted psychology that drove him to commit acts so horrifying they seem beyond belief. In just a few moments, you'll hear first-hand accounts that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about evil. Stay with us to dive deep into the nightmare. The name Ed Gein is synonymous with horror, inspiring some of the most infamous characters in film and literature. Known as the Butcher of Plainfield, Gein's gruesome acts and twisted psyche have left an indelible mark on true crime history. This narrative essay delves into the macabre details of Gein's crimes, explores the psychological aspects of his personality, and utilizes chilling testimonies to create an atmosphere of terror and intrigue. The genesis of a monster. Edward Theodore Gein was born on August 27, 1906, in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Raised in isolation on a desolate farm by a domineering mother and an alcoholic father, Gein's childhood was steeped in religious fanaticism and emotional abuse. His mother, Augusta, preached about the immorality of the world and instilled in him a fear of women and sex. This toxic environment laid the groundwork for his later psychopathic behavior. After the deaths of his parents and brother, Gein was left alone on the family farm. It was during this period of isolation that his dark fantasies began to take shape, eventually manifesting in a series of horrific crimes that would shock the world. The horrors begin. Ed Gein's first known murder occurred on December 8, 1954, when he killed Mary Hogan, a local tavern owner. He shot her in the head and transported her body to his farm. However, it was the discovery of his second murder that revealed the full extent of his depravity. The macabre details, the story of Bernice Wardens. On November 16, 1957, Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Wardens disappeared. Suspicion quickly fell on Gein, who had been seen at the store the previous evening. When police arrived at his farmhouse, they were unprepared for the horrors they would uncover. Inside Gein's dilapidated home, officers found Warden's decapitated body hanging upside down from the rafters, dressed like a deer. Her torso had been gutted, and her head was found in a burlap sack. The gruesome scene was only the beginning. As investigators combed through the property, they discovered an array of macabre trophies made from human remains. Among the items found were skulls turned into bowls, a lampshade made from human skin, a belt made from female nipples, and a corset made from a woman's torso. These horrific artifacts revealed Gein's practice of exhuming bodies from local graveyards and using their parts to create his grotesque collection. The psychology of a killer. Ed Gein's psychological profile is as disturbing as his crimes. Diagnosed with schizophrenia and found to have an unhealthy attachment to his mother, Gein's actions were driven by a profound sense of isolation and twisted desires. His necrophilic tendencies and compulsion to create a woman's suit from human skin were manifestations of his desire to become his mother and keep her essence alive. Gein's crimes were not motivated by sexual gratification or the need for power, but rather a deep-seated psychological compulsion rooted in his abusive upbringing and severe mental illness. His delusions and obsession with death and the female body reflect a mind fractured by trauma and neglect. Testimonies from the edge of darkness. The testimonies of those who knew Ed Gein paint a chilling picture of a man who was both unassuming and deeply disturbed. Neighbors described him as a quiet and reclusive man who often did odd jobs around town. However, those who ventured into his home recounted a different story. Deputy Sheriff Art Schley, one of the first to enter Gein's house of horrors, was deeply affected by what he saw. It was like stepping into a nightmare, Schley said. The smell of death was overwhelming, and the sight of those human remains will haunt me forever. The trial and incarceration. Gein's trial was a media sensation, drawing intense public interest. He was found unfit to stand trial and was committed to a mental institution. In 1968, after being declared sane enough to face the court, Gein was found guilty of first-degree murder but was deemed legally insane and spent the rest of his life in psychiatric hospitals. Gein died of cancer on July 26, 1984, at the Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, Wisconsin. Despite his death, the legacy of his crimes continues to loom large, inspiring numerous books, films, and discussions about the nature of evil and insanity. Conclusion. The story of Ed Gein is a haunting reminder of the depths of human depravity. His crimes, marked by unimaginable brutality and a complete detachment from reality, continue to fascinate and horrify us. By delving into the macabre details of his actions and the twisted psyche that drove him, we gain a deeper understanding of one of the most notorious figures in true crime history. Through the lens of chilling testimonies and psychological analysis, this essay has sought to capture the terrifying essence of Ed Gein's legacy. Uncover stories that will haunt your dreams and leave you yearning for more. perfect for those dark, stormy nights. Don't miss out. Grab your copy now at Amazon, link in the description of the video, and embark on a journey of pure terror. Check also this video about the best horror stories I've known. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales of terror. Until next time, stay safe and beware the shadows.